Hi, this is Jamey with Stonemeyer Games, and today I'm going to talk about my favorite game mechanism in Carson City, which I played recently. I don't own, but I do own this photo of it. Carson City is a worker placement game set in the Old West. It's worker placement and also some kind of area control, some building. You're building a town in the Old West, or most of the town. Part of the town is already there. There are a couple elements of this game that I really enjoyed, and one that I'm not sure if I loved, but I think it's worth mentioning. One of the things I thought is definitely worth mentioning is the setup, which is just a really cool little way of setting up the board. There's some mountains, these big mountain tiles that go out on the board, or they're big wooden tokens in the version I played. And the board is I believe it was a 7x7 hex grid, and you'd roll 2d6s at the beginning of the game during setup to put out mountains. So there's a black d6 and a white die that you're rolling, and the cross section determines where you're going to put out a mountain on the board. I'm sure other games have done this, but I just thought it was a really elegant way to create a randomized setup at the beginning of the game. We ended up with, I think, 5 or 6 mountains on there at the beginning of the game, and they looked interesting. They created an interesting spatial puzzle, and in future games, it would be an equally random scenario where all the mountains could be off to one side. There could be a wall of mountains down the middle. There could be various combinations depending on what those dice roll. I thought that was a neat idea for a random setup. The thing that I'm on the fence about that I don't want to say it's my favorite, because I don't know necessarily if it made the game more fun, but I did enjoy it thematically, was the dueling mechanism in the game, which is that there are certain action spaces, or quite a few action spaces really, where you can place your worker there, and then if another player wants that space, they can put their worker there as well, and then before you actually resolve that action, at the end of the round, you duel. So the two players have a quick little duel. It's a neat little mechanism, and one of those players doesn't get the benefit, and the other player does get the benefit of that space. The reason I'm on the I really like it thematically. In terms of whether or not I actually like it as a favorite mechanism, I'm a little on the fence about, because it ends up, like, especially early in the game, if you lose some of those duels, you're losing pretty important things that you need to start building your engine throughout the game. So it's an interesting thing to mitigate during the game, but I don't know if it made the game, it did make the game more fun. I think it just made the game more difficult, I think. I think it increases the chances that a player may just really fall flat in the game if they lose some of those duels. My favorite mechanism in the game isn't wholly innovative or unique, but I just really like the way that Carson City implemented it. And this is where the photo comes in. At the beginning of every round, each player gets to choose a role. I don't know if this represents them or maybe a supporter of theirs in the village this round, but these are different characters in the game, and they each give you a very powerful asymmetric bonus. Like this guy gives you $9. The sheriff gives you the sheriff token, which you can place on a spot, and no one can duel you there if you have there. So you have an extra worker and a spot that can't be claimed by someone else. There's some that deal with like buying land or placing buildings. There are discounts. And also on each of these characters, they show you the amount of money that you can keep at the end of the round. And they also show you the order in which you will take actions during the round. I can't remember if we took it clockwise, if it was just maybe the first. I think it was just the first player was the lowest number, or maybe the highest number, but the player order. So a lot going on these little tiles. But I just really liked how they went all out for the asymmetry of these tiles. It reminded me a little bit of Marco Polo, a Euro game where the asymmetry is very, very distinct. But what I thought was really cool here is that you get to change the role every round, and you have the potential of claiming the same role each round if no one else took it. So I think I took the sheriff the first 2 rounds, and then I took something else later. But I just thought that, there was a dueling one that I took late in the game that I thought was really good, because I did go into dueling. But I thought this was really cool, that you had this strong sense of asymmetry, but every round you got to refresh it. So you could choose the same thing, choose a different thing. And so you got a feel for like a lot of different asymmetric factions, but over the course of the same game. I thought that was really neat. I really, really like that element of Carson City. There's a lot going on in this game. If you have a different favorite mechanism in Carson City, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Or if any of these things that I mentioned today, the randomized setup, the dueling mechanism, or the character selection each round, if they remind you of another game that has a similar mechanism that you really enjoy, I'd love to hear about that in the comments as well. Thanks.